In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Qui-Gon Jinn and Eopie mail away exclusive figure for the Legacy Collection. So if you were around collecting during the Legacy Collection, you will recall that this was a really big hit for Hasbro. It took, I think, if I recall correctly, there were so many orders placed for this that it ended up getting delayed for those who submitted the mail away request later on. I was one of those people, I think, where I ended up getting this a lot later than what was originally scheduled for. I'm trying to think when I got this exactly. It was somewhere around 2010. I did send away for this at the time, so what you needed was 5 UPC codes from any 5 figures. I think at the time it was Legacy Collection, Clone Wars, Saga Legends, any of those 3. And then you would send $6.99 as a check or money order to cover the shipping, I suppose. And then you get, in theory, 6 to 8 weeks later is when you would receive your figure. And I think I ended up getting a letter through the mail, if I recall correctly, saying it was going to be delayed. And I'm trying to think when I got this exactly. It may have been like October 2010. And at this point, the Legacy Collection was already over, and it was well into the Vintage Collection at this point. But thankfully I got it. It's been a big part of my collection ever since 2010, so 13, almost 14 years now at this point. And to this day, I would argue that this is still the best 3 3/4 inch Qui-Gon we've ever gotten. The head sculpt looks exactly like Liam Neeson. There's really not a whole lot of newness to this set, actually, but despite that, it still has a fresh feel to it, and obviously it's been a big hit with a lot of collectors over the years, and even to this day. So it's a great set all around. Very glad to own this. So talk about the packaging a little bit. It came in a standard white box, and all it said on it was just Star Wars, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Eopie. And that was it. There was no pictures, or of course there was probably some legal words around it, but nothing fancy. It was in a very standard box. It was kind of like the generic grocery items that you used to see in the grocery store back in the day, where it would just say cereal on a white box, or like cookie or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? But it was something like that. And then you open it up, and there really wasn't a lot of packing in it. It was just Qui-Gon strapped in, and then the Eopie off to the side, and that was it. And pretty much everything that's included with it is all you see here. So the Qui-Gon action figure is just a update of the Evolutions pack from the Jedi Legacy Qui-Gon. As far as I know, all that's really been updated with it is a new head. The boots have been slightly repainted, and then it has the poncho he uses while on Tatooine. And then the Eopie is just a repaint from the Phantom Menace Eopie. There was a Qui-Gon Jinn Eopie that was released during the Phantom Menace line, which is not a bad set either. And I was looking at the prices of that one the other day, and it's really not that expensive, maybe in the $20 or $30 range. Of course, this Qui-Gon is definitely much better, but that one's average, I suppose. And yeah, so they're basically just retools and repaints for this entire set. This is the very first Qui-Gon I ever owned in my collection as well. I recall seeing Qui-Gon in the stores back in 2002 in the Saga line, and I think that Qui-Gon came with an accessory attached to his lightsaber, like he's deflecting a blaster bolt. And I didn't really care for that one at the time, and all the other Qui-Gons up to that point, from like the Phantom Menace line and even Power of the Jedi, I didn't really care for any of those. I didn't think any of them looked very good, so I just ended up not getting Qui-Gon for the longest time. And then of course leading into Attack of the Clones, or later on in the Saga line, into Revenge of the Sith, and even into the Saga collection, Qui-Gon was just simply not available in any of those lines. And it took all the way until the 30th anniversary line until we finally got Qui-Gon again. So Qui-Gon was a missing hole in my collection for many years. And on the channel as well. We're 338 videos in, and I have yet to feature a Qui-Gon on the channel, so it's about time we correct that. Personally, he's one of my favorite characters, probably in my top 10. I would say Qui-Gon's one of those characters where if you have to trust someone to have your back to get you out of trouble, I think Qui-Gon's the man for the job, or one of them, that is. He's a very respectable Jedi. He's one that, of course, I'm a true believer that if Qui-Gon survived the Phantom Menace, that Anakin probably would not have turned to the dark side eventually. He was the father figure that Anakin needed. So it's, in a way, you could say that Darth Maul is the one who brought about the end of the Jedi during that time, I suppose. But yeah, let's just go ahead and take a closer look at this guy. So I think, even to this day, this might be the best likeness to Liam Neeson we ever got. Straightforward, maybe not 100%, but when you look at him from the sides, that looks exactly like him. I think the face paint turned out really well on this. I think everything is about as perfect as it can be. Has his mustache and his beard sculpted there. And his hair has some really good sculpting as well. There are some highlights in it, which I would assume they're trying to go for, like he's walking through a sandstorm. One thing about this particular Qui-Gon sculpt, and even the 30th anniversary figure, and even the vintage collection figure has the same thing. He has a little bit of that giraffe neck going on, and that's because it's accommodating for his hair sculpt here, since it's totally molded in plastic, and quite frankly, it would have to be in order to make it fit. But I think this one does a good job of hiding that because of that poncho. And his poncho is really good. Probably one of the best soft goods items that Hasbro's ever made for Star Wars. It's a very thick material. Has some brown detailing around it. It does attract a lot of dust, as you can see, and it does attract a lot of lint. But it's not too big of a deal. Very nice material, though. Then you can take it off. I'm not going to take it off because it is kind of a pain to take it off and on. But there's really not a whole lot to say about it. It's just his Jedi robes underneath. And like I said, I think he looks kind of off without this poncho on anyway, because then it exposes his giraffe neck. His robes are pretty standard, exactly what you would expect for Qui-Gon. Looks like he kind of has a hole there where you could put a lightsaber, but I don't think one would fit. He does have a soft goods tunic here, and then his plastic for his loincloth, basically. And he has one in the front and the back. Then you have his trousers here with his boots. And like I said, his boots are slightly modified from the previous version, and they just added a little bit of a sand effect on his boots, which is a really nice detailing, and it looks really good. Fades in and out. In terms of his articulation, he does have a ball joint at the head. You're not going to get much more than side-to-side motion out of it, though, because of his hair, but it's not that big of a deal. I don't think you really need Qui-Gon doing too many extremely dynamic looking around poses anyway. But he does have hinge at the shoulders and elbows, swivel wrists, and then hinge at the waist, and then swivel hips, and then hinge knees and hinge ankles. So there shouldn't be any problem at all trying to get this guy on the Eopie. And he does have a little bit of a wide stance. I'm not sure if it's been that way because of years of sitting on this thing, or if Hasbro did that on purpose. It can be a little bit of a struggle to get him to stand on his own. That's why I have the lead sticking out here. That way I can try and prop him up there. But we can put him on a stand here for now. Well, I'll bring out the stand instead. For his accessories, he just comes with his bare minimum. I guess you can count the poncho. you would have to pop his head off and then take it off that way. It is stitched on the sides here, so you would have to raise his arms and then take it that way, or remove it that way. He does have a standard lightsaber, and he does have a very unique hilt, almost all black. One thing that's interesting about Qui-Gon's lightsaber is Hasbro's always done it where his the lightsaber blade is basically just a straight rod. It doesn't really have that effect to it, or it doesn't slim down or anything like that. So it makes me wonder if Qui-Gon's lightsaber was like that in the film. I would have to go back and check. And I'm pretty sure this lightsaber is just a repack from the Phantom Menace or Power of the Jedi, one of those. This isn't an entirely new lightsaber. And I think this was pretty much carried forward into the TVC figure. Still, nice sculpt, nice detailing. Now we're on to the Eopie here. So you probably recall seeing these on Tatooine and the Phantom Menace, besides Qui-Gon riding one. We also see Jar Jar have his little incident with one of them at the pod race. And like I said, this is just a straight repaint, so there's really nothing new with this one compared to the Phantom Menace one. But the paint is very nice on this. It's very light in color. To be honest, it almost looks like he's kind of yellowed. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. I don't think it is, though. I think that's just the look they were going for. I've never had any problems with him standing on his own. He's pretty stable. It's pretty good head sculpt. Eyes are painted good. This is trunk there, I suppose. Has some spots on his neck. And his legs here, and his thighs. And the saddle is completely part of the mold here. It's not removable. You have all these bags around it. And it looks like basically like camping gear, I suppose. Like their sleeping bag or their cot. So these are basically like the camels of Star Wars, I suppose. As you can see, the leads were articulated, so you can move them out and pretend Qui-Gon's leading this along. So he does have some articulation about him as well. He has a swivel neck there, and then the rest of his legs are all swiveled. You're not going to get a whole lot of motion out of him, and quite frankly, what more of a stance are you going to need out of them from this? You just need him to stand and be stable. You can't get him to lay down or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and seat Qui-Gon in. Which is very simple. And you can't get him to hold the lead. Suppose if you worked with it, you can get them to hold it with both hands, but I don't think most people, when they're riding a camel, are going to be riding it with two hands on the leads. I have rode a camel before, a couple times actually, and I never did that. I just held it with one hand. And it looks pretty good. Let's see here. Come to think of it, there is one other thing I want to note. It's not something I normally see with a lot of action figures, but they actually sculpted his fingernails in there, which is really interesting. The amount of detail they put in his hands, not something we normally see. But for just being a retooled action figure, Hasbro did a really nice job with this. You could almost argue that it's an entirely brand new action figure. And we'll bring out Obi-Wan here, just do a minor scene. Basically reenacting that scene where he says, "Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form?" Little did Obi-Wan know he was talking about his future apprentice, or his Padawan. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can tell you about this Qui-Gon and Eopie set. So would I recommend it for your collection? I totally would. If you don't have this in your collection, I suggest you get them in your collection. I still think this is the best Qui-Gon to date. As far as head sculpts, I'm trying to think. I think there was a Qui-Gon in the Movie Heroes line where he had the light up lightsaber. And I recall thinking that, oh, that head sculpt looks alright. But this is definitely the best likeness with a super articulated action figure. And this one might even be better than that one. I would have to go back and check. But I just recall seeing that Movie Heroes figure and thinking, that doesn't look too bad. So this could probably be the best Qui-Gon to date. And the Eopie, it's a nice creature to add to your collection. Would be nice to get a couple of them, maybe like 3 of them. Make a little diorama out of it. Maybe someday. And like I said, this has been a part of my collection for 13 years now. It's the first Qui-Gon I ever owned. And I think this may have been the first really big mailway action figure that Hasbro did. I'm trying to think which one came first between this or the Captain Rex one. It may have been the Rex one, actually. I didn't send away for that one. I did send away for this, and then the Sergeant Brick with the Galactic Battle Game mat. I wish Hasbro would bring back mailway action figures. I think that was one of the most fun things they could do about action figure collecting. Kind of surprising they don't do that these days. You would think they would, as a way to incentivize people to buy the action figures in the stores instead of laying the rod on the pegs. Especially the deluxe action figures. Hopefully someday they bring it back, but who knows. But yeah, solid 10 out of 10 set. Highly recommended. If you don't have it in your collection yet, I suggest you do. As far as price, I don't recall seeing this as a truly expensive set. Maybe like $40 or less. So not too bad to get a hold of. But anyways, this concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews in the future. Always been more to come. And if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate your support. Check out some links in the description if you haven't done so already. As always, thanks for watching.